Innovation Rockstars. Innovation Rockstars.
In this episode, we welcome Andrew Willett, Senior Expert at Toyota Motor Europe.
Hi, and welcome back to Innovation Rockstars. My name is Chris Muroth, and in this episode, I am excited to welcome Andrew Willett from Toyota Motor Europe. Andrew, thanks a lot for joining us. It's a pleasure having you.
Hello, Christian. Thanks for having me as well.
All right. So as always, we start straight away with a short 60 seconds introduction sprint. This is all about you, your career, and your role at Toyota. So for the next 60 seconds, Andrew, the stage is all yours. Let's go.
Okay, thank you, Christian. So my name is Andrew. I've been with Toyota since 2008. Before that, I was living in Japan for 9 or 10 years, not working for Toyota, working for other companies. And I decided to make a change. I moved to Toyota. We worked a lot, though, for the Japanese side of the corporation, delivering new production technologies, new measuring technologies to them from the European region. And then from 2018, we started to change things. So we started to work more for the European plants to deliver these innovations directly to them. And also because there's a lot more innovators in the region, and that's growing now, we needed to put in place some innovation management systems as well. So that's my role today in Toyota, is to come with new innovations for production, but also to help the plants look after and manage this innovation across the region.
On point and in time. That's how I got to know you, Andrew. Perfect. All right. So let's move on. To get to know a bit better, I do have 3 sentence starters for you, and I would like you to, fill in those sentences. Let's start with number 1. If I could only take 3 things with me to an isolated island, they would be?
So can I take people?
Sure.
Can I have Wi-Fi?
Sure.
Then maybe I'm going to take my family, some Wi-Fi device, and my guitar.
Oh,
and with the Wi-Fi, I'm going to call for food, right? So
all right,
and everything else I need. So
okay, fair enough. All right. Number 2 sentence is, to me, the Toyota way means?
Helping people.
Helping people. All right. Mm-hmm. And number 3, I am best known for?
So this is going to depend on who you ask. And at home, I'm best known by my kids for saying in a moment. So this is their constant comment to me. Daddy, will you do this? And I say in a moment. Why? Because I'm so busy and they are pretty demanding little guys. We have 3 of them. So that's what I'm best known for at home. At work recently, maybe known as Mr. ITONICS or something like this. I don't know. So
beautiful. All right. So in a moment and ITONICS, lovely. And now let's start talk about innovation, or more clearly, innovating the Toyota way. So, of course, Toyota is famous for the Toyota way, right? Which is a set of principles and behaviors underlying the Toyota Motor Corporation's approach and production system. Can you maybe, on a high level somewhat, describe and introduce us to the Toyota way? What does it mean?
So Toyota way is actually something very big. And, when I was living in Japan, I was pretty interested in this, and I got some books before joining the company. And, there's like 2 or 3 volumes of Toyota way. So I don't think we're going to get through the Lord of the Rings today. Yeah. But I think what people often talk about is the Toyota business practice, which I think, if I understand the other questions you're interested to ask today, it's more about this. And that's a kind of 8-step method for problem solving, where we start out, we clarify the problem, we break this down, we set some target, which is, actually something which might be achievable out of this massive problem. And then we analyze the root causes for that specific issue, and we make some countermeasures based on that analysis. Then we have to see the selected countermeasures through, check their effect. And then if things are working, then we standardize those pieces. So this is what we call the kind of Toyota business practice. And Toyota way, like I say, is something much, much larger. We probably need to hire some people to talk about that.
That might be a separate episode on its own. Okay, fair enough. and maybe following up on that, on the business practice itself, what is Toyota's view and approach on innovation, just in general, in the context of Toyota's business practice?
So I can talk about my view mainly because I think each person has their own independent view on what innovation is really about. So my view is that the people are the center of innovation, and we want to help, or I want to help all the people in the company engage in this kind of innovation. And that innovation should help people. So it should help either the person who's doing the job themselves, they improve their own processes, or it improves the organization on a wider basis. It helps the final customer in their mobility needs or other needs, depending on what future products we might have. Maybe it helps the environment, and that contributes to people's enjoyment as well. So this is, for me, it's about doing innovation that will then help people in their daily actions.
And now here's an interesting thing. So, as you said before, a very important part of Toyota's traditional business practices, which of course have been ingrained in the corporate culture for decades, right, is, defining and then closing some sort of gap. Now, of course, I guess this is highly beneficial, right, for also new members entering Toyota, because they have a guideline on how to do things. They understand basically how the corporate clock is clicking to a certain extent. But now you also have, both new and existing employees that try to bring in new ways, as you said, on innovation, on innovating stuff, that could be new ways of research, new ways of work, and so on. And obviously, you do not want to reject those new ways straight away, right? So how can you blend those new ways of working with the traditional Toyota business practices?
Yeah, good question. So for me, the Toyota business practice, it teaches and guides people to think in a very logical way.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the people that come to the company, and myself included, we don't necessarily have that logical way naturally gifted to us. Some people do. But a lot of people do not. So I think the Toyota way, or the Toyota business practice, is firstly extremely valuable, and it's become like a shared language across the company. I mean, so if you go to Africa or to India or somewhere else, if you go to Japan, of course, as well, this is one shared language which people can talk in. And everybody can appreciate and understand this language. So it's very important the new members that come to the company, they understand this language. The reality is, to apply it in some business areas is quite challenging, where maybe you don't have a massive history of data transparency, or it's a new area, so you don't have a lot of history to go from. So I think people are very aware of this in the organization, like some very standardized procedures. It's quite easy to just get going and do analysis. In other areas, you might have to set up some new processes or some new, it's just like you set up a new factory, you might have to put some new process there. And you have to establish everything around that. So even though we have that kind of guideline when we join the company and everybody is instructed in this, we are very open to new ways to do things. It's a very diverse company. The members, we call members, we don't call ourselves employees, we say the members, they can bring these new ideas that they have. But maybe the important point is that those ideas will become a business process in the company. And the Toyota business practice can always be used to analyze the efficiency of those processes. So if you come with a new idea, I want to do my job in this way and with this workflow, that job itself does not need to be conforming to Toyota business practice in itself. So it doesn't have to follow those steps. But the actual process chain that's put in place, maybe it's an office-based process chain. It can be analyzed by Toyota business practice and continuously improved, just like any other process.
That's interesting.
Is it clear?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's interesting. Maybe let's take another example, which might be a bit broader. For example, when conducting future research, right? So, while the Toyota way, as you said, starts with identifying a gap, maybe, as you said, the gap might not be that evident when conducting future research, for example, because there is one, no history, but also B, it's kind of trying to project something into the future, right? Which is basically a lot of unknowns. So how to do that? Is there still a way to evaluate the process you set in place by the typical Toyota principles? Or is that more an open approach, which maybe also, I don't know, does not really fit the principles in the modern world? I don't know.
So we can put in place, so each business group can put in place like its own processes. Yeah, I mean, they have to fit the whole organization and some things which are already in place. But each business group can establish some process chain for implementing their work. And of course, those applied process chain, they can be somehow evaluated in terms of their business performance using Toyota Business Practice. This does not mean you have to start with, what's our problem? It means you could set a workflow in place where the first step is exploration. Yeah. And you explore and you might find, we have so many new trends where we'd like to look at. And that's you're accountable from that process step. So we put this much energy in with this working method, and this is what we got as the output. And you might break that down into some work steps. So you can put in whatever, say, process chain you might like to do as a business unit. And I think it can be also complementary to use this very grounded business practice we have for years to later analyze that. And also you put it in place for a reason. And you set some KPIs at the start and you follow those KPIs. So this history, I think, does not go away. But I think we're increasingly open to people using new methods of implementing their work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And understood.
One other point in this is there is like, I think in every organization, you have those very kind of global targets or strategies which the corporation puts out.
Right.
And in Toyota, at least, we have a kind of bi-directional communication where we can contribute some. Of course, some are very mega targets given out by the corporation, but as they come down, there's also a bi-directional discussion about the things which the members see in terms of new technologies and opportunities, and we can ourselves bring them to the roadmap, and we have some discussion and opportunity to say what we think the KPI or processes should be as well. So I would not see it as a rigid thing which cannot be moved, but it's an analytical tool as well.
Yeah, it is. And obviously it is utmost important to preserve that core, right? To really make sure that's obviously what made Toyota successful, at least a large part of Toyota's success, and still will be in the future. But it's great to hear that you have this bidirectional, option to also have everybody in the organization understand they can change things if it makes sense, obviously, right? But they can do new stuff, and it's not that you're relying on old stuff that it's maybe not working for the times anymore. That's interesting, and I want to maybe dive deeper on that in a minute with you, Andrew. But before we move on, I would like to play a very quick round of a game called Either Or. And it's a very simple game, Andrew, and it works like this. I do give you two options, option 1 or 2, and then you choose one of those options and spend one sentence each to maybe briefly explain why you chose option number 1 or 2. So let's start. The first one goes like this. If you would restart your career, like really from scratch, from the start, would you rather, opt to work in a large organization or in a small one, and why?
My preference today would be for a large organization. So I have been in both. I've worked in an office not much larger than the room I'm in now, with quite a lot of people, in fact, but that experience was also very good, and I can understand the strong points and the weak points of that. But what I see in an effective large organization where the members are empowered to do things is that you can readily find people who have shared interest or synergy, and you can work together. I mean, I can do so much more with my ideas if there are people readily there to take these up and with the passion to take them forwards with the shared mission, then if it's just me by myself and I have to, only a few people around and we're all on full load already.
Yeah.
So, it's that dynamic shift of resources I think is interesting in large organizations.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. That's a great perspective. Okay. Number 2, would you either owe somebody money or owe somebody a favor?
I prefer to owe people a favor, I guess. So I don't recall owing anybody any money in my life. It's not something I normally want to do. And honestly, to owe someone a favor, I will give them a favor anyway from myself. I don't need to owe them something. So.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. And number 3, Andrew, there is that saying that goes like, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And now this is an either or question. And of course, the reality is not black or white. I know that. But if you had investment limitations and could only choose one to invest into, so either into a culture or into strategy, which one would you choose and why?
So I can well believe that culture can eat strategy. I can well believe this. But if you consider my role in the organization, probably I'm going to invest in strategy to make good culture in my team. So this might sound like a cop-out, but I can only control essentially directly what my members do. And I can put in strategies, I can invest my time to improve the working culture in my team and make that as an example for the organization. So that's my approach to business, at least. I look at what I can influence, and there's no point me trying to change something very big, which I cannot. So I'll put my energy where I can change. And this is my garden to look after and to contribute to the whole company's large field. If there's a dirty garden next to me, I can say, hey, at least, I'm not going to criticize you, but I have my own responsibility to try to keep my place clean. This is my philosophy, at least.
Okay, but that's a really interesting perspective. All right, well, then thank you for that. And let's move to innovation at Toyota, as mentioned before. And we talked, a few minutes about a, form of organizational ambidexterity, right? So valuing and living the Toyota principles, exploiting what is there. But at the same time, then building the capabilities to bring in new ways of working, fresh ways of working, exploring what's next. So, and Andrew, when we met the first time, I guess you had an opportunity at hand to put in a new innovation system that brings together all the manufacturing centers. So maybe let's talk about that opportunity for a moment or two. Let's start at the beginning. How did that opportunity actually emerge? What was the starting point?
I think the starting point was that we had made this transition in our team. So before I mentioned that before we worked a lot for the Japanese side of the company, we made a decision to reduce this and bring these innovations directly to European production. And I guess that changed our workload. Today, it's around 80% we do for the European region. And let's just say inside of that for ourselves, we want to be sure that what we are bringing in innovation to the table is exciting for people. We are aware there is people, there's a lot of people in research and development in Toyota. I'm not research and development, I'm production engineering.
Yeah.
There's maybe another 400 or 500 people there, all very good minds, all great networks, very competent people. And we want to ensure that each person is bringing their novelty. And when they bring their novelty, they know that that's really unique in the company. Or if there is an existing activity, that activity is also a sensible competitor to have existing together in the same space. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean you can't do the same thing. It's actually you can do something similar, but let's at least manage those risks. And what was increasingly happening in that ecosystem is that each of these European manufacturing centers, because innovation is getting faster and faster, they also want to be engaged in this. They want to skill up their members. And there are offers going directly to them as well from their own local regions as other people skill up in these networks. And, you need then something in place which brings all of that together to try to ensure at least some single source where people can check, are we doing this already, or what's actually going on in this area? So there was that business change, I think, that was critical.
Yeah. Okay. That's also tells a lot about the goals you set in place, or that were set in place. But from your perspective, why do you think it's actually that important to have a single source of truth, a single point of truth? Is it with a digital platform, for example? Why is it important to the business actually?
So, if we have disparate information, it can take a huge amount of time to find things. Yeah. So you can search one website, other internal website, another site, and maybe you don't firstly find what you need, but there can be many sources then that need to be updated. You don't know which one is the most recent version of this information. And so it seemed to us to be valuable to at least have one single source record, which can be incrementally enriched with new information as it becomes available. And this does not mean that people cannot also collect their own information and link out to this. It's fine. But we want that single source to, let's say, guide people or make it easy to find what's happening.
Yeah, and can you maybe also talk just briefly about some of the most important selection criteria for that platform to you?
Yeah, so there was actually a research workflow that we drew up, which we would say this is something close to the ideal we would like to achieve. What we don't want to do is to go into each department's own speciality area. Like a guy working to develop powertrain, all the detailed pieces of this, that's their business. But there's a certain level of information which is useful to share across an organization. And so we looked at a certain workflow to achieve this with the necessary flexibility. And what we decided we needed inside of that was some database systems, some radar system, road mapping capabilities. Those are the kind of things that we thought would be suitable common items to have in such a system. We don't want to drill down into fine cost analysis or, model-based system design or this kind of thing. Yeah. It's more of a top-level system we were looking for.
Yeah. Okay. And interesting. And of course, I can imagine that deploying an innovation platform, or basically any new system in general, right, inside such an environment, you described earlier, is a tremendous task, right? So how did you facilitate and manage what I consider to be a change process, right? You have to start somewhere, you have to include people, engage people. So how did you manage that?
So you're right, it was very challenging. We spent maybe 12 months or more on this process. The start point for us was to make some study by ourselves, to say, okay, this is first the kind of thing we would like to achieve. These are the kind of problems we see. And we took that image to some key stakeholders quite early on, and not actually just the common kind of business stakeholders, but also to places like human resources, where they are also very interested and actually taking a very leading role now in Toyota about how to engage the company in innovation. So it's very important to have all these different departments at least aware of what we'd like to do early on. And then at the necessary time, also to engage the stakeholders of in different parts of the business. And to go further than that, we did a study on maybe 40 software. Yeah, so it's a lot of different systems, and we mapped them out in terms of capabilities and to meet what we wanted to do. And finally, maybe we just had a few that really meet our requirements. And then we put those through some brutal testing and tested the best ones with our stakeholders, so with a real demonstration system.
Yeah.
And after this, you have to be very open to all of the criticism and the cost analysis and all of these kind of things. But the early steps is about having the people on board.
Yeah, yeah, and I was just about to ask you, one of those aspects you just mentioned, right? So, of course, part of the culture and the business principles at Toyota is, avoiding any kind of waste, of course, right? Which includes money, resources, time, and so on. Time being a resource, of course, and money as well. So, of course, okay, so you have to, get value from, for example, testing the platform, as you said, brutally testing the platform, basically from day one on, at least show that it can be valuable to your stakeholders. And now, how can you make it plausible that a digital platform can actually deliver real improvements and profitability? Is it only through showing that, like, the demonstration system, and then, hey guys, this is how it would like in production, and we can work with that? Or do you really have also to calculate some, use cases, benefits, or even business cases to go one step further and kind of theoretically prove on paper that there is substantial benefits?
Yeah, so what was necessary for us to do this? And I don't know if every other organization or large organization is the same. But we really went through and analyzed some like typical research workflows or innovation workflows that we have already. This means we would go through the actual work done. What's the labor cost? What's actually any expenses, travel expenses, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we listed that up in terms of costs and CO2 impact and all this kind of stuff, not just the cost factor. Mm-hmm. And I think there were 1,000 or more sub-actions. So we have a very long list of all these different sub-actions which contribute to major actions. Mm-hmm. And from that, we started to create kind of recipes. So like, imagine a person implements a project in this pattern. What is the cost? Imagine we do these kind of steps. What's the cost? What's the eco impact? And we even included in this analysis, on our side at least, the personal time impact. So like a person going on a business trip, what's their daily experience? They get ready in their house, they get in the car, they go, all those things we calculated. But in honesty, we had to show maybe not all of this. So we took pieces of that to make the main business case, because there's certain things which the corporation is ready to listen to and act on, and other things which are for us, for our reference, we can show as KPI later, but it's mainly the ones that are the focus of the organization that we decided to show to really sell the system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what were your metrics of success like? When were you in a position to say go or no go? What criteria did have to be met?
So we, first point, maybe coming from the last one, is we did those kind of analysis for kind of minimum case scenario and a maximum case scenario. So we didn't just have one, we had all those different scenarios. And we made some metrics of success, which were like these priority ones, maybe around reducing traveling, reducing attendance of events, conferences, because some conferences we had a lot of people going to. It's a huge cost and impact for the corporation. And we were also calculating things like, what if this guy is like not doing this job today, but he's doing something else? You can get some other benefit from this, yeah? Mm-hmm. So those kind of additional benefits. And the problem is we did those calculations, but then COVID struck. Yeah. And if you imagine, all of that was eliminated almost overnight. So there is no business travel. Event attendance became almost fully digital. And together with that, the cost of event attendance also dropped. Yeah. And so there was a lot of things were naturally eliminated by COVID. But then what we noticed was all these people now working at home, they don't see each other in the office. There's a different metric there, actually, we started to look at, that people were, struggling to share information or know what's actually happening in the organization with this new digital environment. So this is somehow what we look at today. And as we emerge from lockdown, we think we should not go back to some of those old business methods. So this is where we try to, hey, actually, even we're coming out of that situation, there are still the opportunities we first set out to get. We've got these new opportunities with a much more digitalized environment. Mm-hmm. And especially going forwards now with the issues in Ukraine, this financial situation in Europe, I think will be persisting for a long time. Yeah. And so I think those initial metrics only become stronger. That's my perspective, at least. So we will follow those metrics as we go forwards, of course.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Yeah. Okay. That's super interesting. And maybe picking up another aspect you mentioned before is, you said the ambition is kind of to engage or at least reach, kind of everyone in the organization. So you want to be inclusive, right? And here's a hard one, a hard question. So, and we talked about this before, right? But the reality, so you want to be inclusive, but the reality is, at the same time, you are obliged to manage confidentiality a lot, like confidential data governance, who's able to see what, who is allowed to see what, and so on. So to me, this is a double-edged sword, right? So how can you be inclusive, but at the same time ensure a proper level of confidentiality of data and information? How does that go?
Yeah, so what we did, we started out with a small user group in the system. We looked, because these are all people who can access this information we're putting in the system, right? And we looked there what system settings we could use, how we can use the system with our existing systems to manage confidentiality in different ways. And today, we progress with there. We have more than 450 people in the system. And we're bringing into this system interim people. So we made an account we call interim, which is for people who work for Toyota temporarily, whether they're a contractor or intern. And actually, legally speaking, we are not allowed to share irrelevant information with those people most of the time. And so we made this setup using all of the settings in the ITONICS platform, that the necessary information can be shared to those people. And then they are included. They can participate in some ideation challenges that they are invited to, just like I can in some event I'm not invited to either. And, it's working pretty well, I think, that we're shielding the information as it should be done responsibly. And those people can also participate in such an environment. In fact, they get quite a nice situation that the system appears maybe very dedicated for them. With only relevant information. They don't see the broader benefit maybe, but for the scope of their work, it's enough, I think. And it's important that we are using maybe a blend of the very good permissions which we have in ITONICS system, and also with our SharePoint system where users hold their own data and fully control access rights. And we use those together. And then I think everybody can feel assured they know what they're sharing with who.
And okay, so we have that, and then now, can you maybe just briefly also share some of your crucial steps in the engagement plan? Like, okay, you need to make people aware, right? But how could you possibly do that in an organization that is such as large as yours? So how to engage people? Is there any step-by-step approach or more of a continuous approach that you follow? How do you do that?
So there was a step-by-step approach in that when we first started, we had this core group of users who really learned about the system, put some examples in, and actually significant content was input by our team. But to penetrate into other parts of the organization, they also need to feel some ownership of this and be able to construct it. So a lot of the data models we have in the system today, they were developed together with other teams, some key people appointed by their management to be people to take this forward in their own departments so that they have buy-in. This is, of course, is still a pilot system, and we're still getting used to this business mode. So we retain right now today a lot of ownership ourselves, like in terms of admin rights and this kind of thing. But in the next step, we would make this a little bit different, I think. That those people who've been engaged in the system and helping us carry it forwards, we would start to bring them more into this admin area and the data definition area. So it's quite an effort, to be honest. So we trained more than 150 people directly ourselves, because these are our data models. We say, this is what we expect you to put here. And then those colleagues take it forwards in the organization.
Yeah, super interesting. And basically, going step by step, then ultimately make sure you can kind of control control the impact. right? And be inclusive at the same time, but make sure it's within the guardrails of what you basically have built. Okay, that's super interesting. Instead of just opening up to everybody without any training and say, well, do whatever you want, which clearly would then maybe be rather chaos than connected well with the way how Toyota innovates and the way how Toyota thinks. Okay, super interesting. All right, so I think maybe Andrew, let's maybe summarize a few things. What would be your 3 key takeaways that from our discussion today that you want listeners to take away from this episode?
So I think having a single source of truth in an organization is a massive benefit, but you need to have some sensible boundaries there that you don't invade other people's work area or try to impose something on them. The second one is that getting to the end of putting such a system in is not an easy mission in a big organization. So it's best to get those supporters on board early. People, even if they are not the easiest people for you in your daily job, make the effort to get them on board because they will really help you later in these missions, I think.
Yeah. And
the last third point is, don't assume that just putting some software there will change behavior. So we've put some additional effort into make engagement with people, and we have people, as I mentioned before, these key people in other parts of the organization who are putting this effort in for us. And it's something where they need to be involved, engaged, have part of the win. It's not something you can just do by yourself. That's my 3 pieces of advice, I guess.
Yeah, so especially the last point is very important, right? You just cannot throw software at an organization, say, well, good luck with that, now have fun. But it's actually, it requires a dedicated and a directed effort. Now, if you look ahead into the future, Andrew, what are, what's next? What are the next steps in your journey?
So, as I mentioned, this was kind of a pilot phase, and we're going to make our evaluation. How does this mode of business really work for us? This means assessing the actuals. Yeah. So how is the user experience and feedback? How much were our administration efforts, our recommendations for next steps? So, it can be because how many people or how much time did we apply to the administration process? Yeah. Are the users satisfied? Do they want more? I think we'll probably hear that. And then we have to say, okay, to really implement this software in the organization, it should look like this with this much internal support, this much external support to make it work. So that is kind of the next mature step, let's say. And I think on the more exciting side is testing some of the new capabilities that you've developed. The gateway function looks very exciting for us in terms of potential benefit to find companies, but also again the benefit to reduce some of our efforts to go out and find them ourselves. Very interesting, I think.
Yeah, well, that's super interesting, and thank you very much for those kind words. And finally, Andrew, looking back now, and I need to ask you this, right? Looking back on your professional career so far, what would you say was your greatest innovation rockstar moment so far?
It's pretty easy for me to choose this one because it happened quite recently, and I'm feeling very good about it. During COVID, we made a development in Europe. It was for the Japanese side of the organization. And this was something we proposed. We had a very good partner in Japan, and we found very good partners in Europe to help us achieve this extremely, they were so good at what they did. And there's some technical hurdles, some business hurdles, and we overcame these and we made really nice products. And this was actually on the racetrack recently in Germany. Let's say on business sense, it's very attractive. I think it's good for the environment, and it's also contribute to the vehicle performance. It was a fun project and inspirational for, to see this in place in the end on the actual car. And it's not something which happens with every project, because many things, they don't go like you expect. You can get caught up in things. There can be another competitor comes, but this was quite an interesting case for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I
that
think
was my happy moment.
Yeah, and it's utterly rewarding to see really some real world outcomes and outputs, right? So that's beautiful. That's actually a beautiful rockstar moment. Congratulations to that one, Andrew. And I'd say with this, we are already done, right? With this, I'd say we wrap up this episode. So Andrew, it was a pleasure to listen to you. Thanks again for the really interesting insights and also learnings from Toyota.
And thank you for having me. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Of course. All right. Anytime again. And to everybody listening or watching, if you like the show, then leave us a rating or a review and share the podcast with whomever you think this might be interesting for. And if you want to get in touch, simply shoot us a message at info@innovationrockstars.show. Now that's it. Thank you for your time. See you in the next episode. Take care and bye-bye.
This was Innovation Rockstar Andrew Willett from Toyota Motor Europe on innovating the Toyota way. If you would like to give us feedback on this episode or know someone, perhaps yourself, who also has some thrilling stories or insights to share from the world of corporate innovation, just shoot us a note at info@innovationrockstars.show. You like the show? Then leave us a rating and recommend it to others. For more inspiring innovation stories, visit our website at www.innovationrockstars.show or browse through our Innovation Rockstars channel on all major podcast platforms.